Good evening, everybody. Right, let's move on. Apologies.
I've not received any apologies for this meeting.
Great. Do we have any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests and other disclosable interest? Doesn't look like we have. Excellent. Confirmation of minutes from the previous meeting. Has anybody anything to say or picked up anything from them? Can we take them as read then? Great. Public participation, nobody is registered, so there is none tonight. And so I haven't got, sorry, I missed my chair's announcements. I haven't got any announcements to make other than the fact that we are welcoming some people here from the National Grid and also Laura as well. So we will come to them as we go along. So first of all, the first item on the agenda is the quarterly performance report, second quarter. And Andy, would you like to speak to that first?
Thank you, Chair. Not a huge amount to say. Obviously, report in the usual format picks up performance and workload and the council plan up until the end of September. It's all pretty good news, pleased to say. The one red has become amber, so hopefully that's on a course to becoming green over the course of the year. But happy to take questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Andy? John? Oh, okay. Can you put the microphone on, John?
It's on, yeah. Pleased I was to see that the validation of planning applications has turned a corner. That's been often a problem indicator for us, but a really good performance in this last quarter, 94.1%. I see on Appendix 1A, which obviously improves our year to date. But well done, the planning department, I would say. Thank you.
And Andrew first.
Thank you, Chair. Just a minor point that was discussed in one of the earlier meetings. Buried in there, we noted a fly tipping increase Q1 to Q2 of 66%. It was noted that this could either be a start of a trend or more likely a large increase on a small number. So it creates a variation. So just a point for note. Thank you.
Yeah. Dean?
Just to note and to say I'm pleased on most of us that the attendance rate or absenteeism rate has decreased and the attendance rate is approved amongst staff. I just hope they get even healthier.
David wanted to comment on the one amber element. One, two.
Try that, thank you. Yes, I have a full report to go to executive or council for all of them, but no, this is all pretty good news. And I'd like to read the statement that I've got here and what have you regarding validation performance. The improvements implemented in this area are now beginning to become embedded, and Q2 performance was very strong across all categories. This is for your information, really. Major applications, 96.3%, were validated within 7 working days. Non-major applications, 95.6% validated within 5 working days. And other applications, including householders, 83.8% validated within 5 days. These outcomes represent a sustained uplift in performance achieved through hard work, detailed progress review, and continued collaboration between planning support and the development management teams. The introduction of improved triage procedures, clearer validation checklists has supported faster turnaround and greater consistency. I'm not doing well today, am I? Work is ongoing to further improve performance, add resilience, and enhance the quality of validation checks, ensuring that the information received at submission is both complete and accurate. This approach is expected to reduce rework later in the process and further strengthen the efficiency and robustness of the service. Looking ahead, performance levels are expected to remain high, with further incremental improvements anticipated as additional processes refinements are implemented throughout the remainder of the year. And at this time, I would also like to thank Kieran for the work that he's done bringing in this new system that I believe is working, because it's nice to see everything green bar this one. And I'm just waiting when I can come here and say they're all green and what have you. But I'm very pleased. Kieran, I think, has done a fabulous job on it. To get to where we've got. And not only that, it will be improving. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Has anybody got any questions about any of that? Oh, Douglas.
Thank you, Chair. Aren't we good? Lots of green. Are we setting our targets hard enough? Should there be a reassessment now to make them a bit harder, so that people are working towards targets? Because, aren't we jolly good chaps getting it all into green? Where do we improve from here? Comment, please.
David, would you like to comment on that?
Does it work? It's working. Oh, the light's not on, but it works. Yeah. Okay. Very difficult to answer that, really. To be honest, if everybody was to produce an 85% target and achieve it month after month, quarter after quarter, then I think the council would be one of those exemplary ones, right at the top. We're pretty well there. I don't think that we need to increase our targets. Let's give our staff a little bit of praise first, because they've been, under the cosh for many months. In fact, I think it's 3 years that they've been amber and red every single month. And it's very, very nice to get into this stage. And I am, as I said before, I am very, very pleased in this. So in the planning side of things and the enforcement side of things, I think we've got to leave it as it is for the time being. I don't think it's a thing to do to make it any harder and what have you. Other people may have different ideas, but, when our targets are that high, 85 and 95% sort of thing, and as I say, it is getting better. We are getting the applicants to provide more information and the proper information when they originally submit it. So it's not going backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. So that is also good news. And of course, that's not recorded because you only start when you've got all the documentation. So very good.
Dean.
Just to say, our targets are generally higher than the national targets anyway. And the other thing is, we both, Dave and I, when we've been speaking to Kieran, there's no, certainly within the planning area of this council, there's no idea at all of just staying where we are. It's always about continual improvement. It will get harder to improve, because the better you are, the harder it is to achieve that little bit extra. But there is certainly no slacking, I think, in the desire to achieve the highest standards possible.
John.
Just to echo Dean and David, I think these are stretch targets, so we're actually performing really well against the stretch targets. And if you look over the last number of years, we've actually been pushing and trying to improve. And now we've reached a point where there's only one amber and everything is green. I think we need to consolidate that rather than start to shift the goalposts again, so that if you can consolidate it, you can build in a structure that's pretty robust all round. At some point, you may want to think, well, can we always do better? You always want to do your best. And I think we just need to say thank you to all the officers that have actually delivered on this, because we've actually reached a point which has been the best since I've been here on the council. So I don't think we need to change anything at the moment. Let's consolidate.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. I would point out as well, we are going to have a session on planning enforcement, because I don't think the two things go necessarily as hand in hand as they have been put across so far. But it is good news that planning overall, in terms of handling the applications and dealing with the public, is meeting all of those criteria so well. Thank you. Right. If that's it, we'll go on to the next item. Would that be okay? Good. Right. Health and Wellbeing Board update, item number 7. And that's going to be from Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. I can either skip through this or read you the official line, because we do get an update on this after the meeting. So I'll talk about the meeting on 29th of September 2025. We covered work by the Joint Local Health and Wellbeing Board, their annual update. The annual update on the board highlighted the key achievements and outlined future areas of focus. These included healthy weight, children's development, youth provision, domestic abuse support, and NHS neighbourhood health plans. The update was delivered on behalf of all partners, both statutory and VCSE. It was noted that certain areas in the county experienced poorer health outcomes and therefore required targeted work, dedicated effort, and additional resources to support meaningful health improvement. David Mahaffey was keen for public health to share data on children's weight at year 6, with recent positive indicators compared to national. Members praised successful impact on the Health Worcestershire programme across the county. Next came Health and Work Strategy. Worcestershire has been selected as one of 15 Work Well pilot areas in 2024. ICBs were required to lead the development of a work and health strategy outlining how local partners would work together to reduce economic inactivity due to ill health or disability. The strategy responded to rising sickness absence gaps in inclusive employment, fragmented support, and national policy drivers such as the Get Britain Working White Paper and Connected to Work. It aligned local ambitions and success measures, focusing on inclusive workplace supported employment pathways, early interventions, and system-wide collaboration. It also set out how SMEs could be supported to become good employers and help individuals gain the right skills at the right time. Brief conversations followed around fit notes, with the ICB advising work was ongoing and could be updated to HWB at a later stage. Mental health was the single biggest barrier to work locally, and was commented that it would be a good outcome to support people to stay in employment while supporting their mental well-being, creating places for people at work which were conducive to better physical and mental health. Next came a pharmaceutical needs assessment, which was a particularly comprehensive document. The 2025 P&A outlined current and future pharmaceutical service needs supporting NHSE's commissioning decisions. Whilst most residents have good access, Councillor Bowen requested a review of the standards by which rural provision is measured. The P&A highlighted local health challenges, including chronic conditions and ageing populations. Engagement showed high satisfaction, but raised concern about opening hours, waiting times, transport, and digital barriers. Councillor Wilmot queried the reduction in services since 2022, reflecting a national trend driven by financial pressures, pharmacy chain exits and workforce challenges. Questions were raised about out-of-hours provision and local support for and emergency demand. Key recommendations included improving public awareness, aligning service with local priorities, enhancing evening access, simplifying commissioning, and ensuring inclusive, respectful care. Final publication was 1st of October 2025, with recommendations to be considered by local health partners and commissioners. As I say, this was an extensive report, and I did challenge because it was our district which bore the brunt of pharmaceutical reductions. The overall reduction was about 6%, which I think only accounted for about 6 or 7 pharmacies closing down, but I think we had 4 in our district. So it might be something to keep an eye on in the future. Health Protection Group update was the next comment. The Health Protection Board update, including progress against its strategy with continued focus on improving MMR uptake. Despite leading regional rates, efforts remain to meet the WHO target. A vaccination campaign was planned for early 2026 in libraries and family hubs. The Health Protection and Emergency Planning teams developed outbreak guidance and worked with partners on pandemic plan. Circuit breaker testing was produced to tackle rising HIV and syphilis rates. Over the past year, the Health Protection team managed several complex tasks, including Strep A in prison, suspected measles, MPOX, norovirus, flu, avian flu and food poisoning, TB, and gas in care homes. Vaccination rates for children in care had increased due to targeted NHS England funding. However, further investment needed to be identified to sustain this progress and ensure continued access to immunisations for this vulnerable group. Integrated Commissioning Executive Officers Group update. Section 75 agreement, overseen by ICEOG, ISOG presumably, was valued at approximately £150 million locally, with around £85 million allocated to Better Care Fund. The update highlighted the latest issues and challenges ranging from adult services to hospital discharge, community services, equipment and public health services. Despite an underspend, there were long-term cost pressures that needed to be addressed. The equipment service, which provided essential support, was forecast to overspend and was being closely monitored. Investment levels and the range of items offered were under review, with consideration being given to a streamlined list of supporting equipment to ensure sustainability and efficiency in 25-26. The Better Care Fund had a report which linked into that. During the period, I raised 2 points with the board for consideration. I reported earlier that the NHS England published the Acute Trust Hospital League table, ranking Worcestershire amongst the poorest performing, that is, at 110th out of 134. The other paper I suggested was the government healthcare strategy, which is predicated in part on successful GP surgeries. However, the BMA reports declining GP numbers, rising demand and knock-on effects for patients. These two were considered by the board, but it was thought more appropriate, and this underlines the relationship that Christine and I have got, that the Scrutiny board took these on, and Christine has agreed to pursue these at Scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Was there any discussion about pharmacy provision in Great Malvern at all?
Not specifically. I think that was one of the problems, I think, in the board. It gives you a statement of effectively of what is. If you want to challenge, the scrutiny board is the
Yes,
is the
I
one to
challenge
actually take it up.
At the Health Overview Scrutiny Board.
Yeah, so I've no doubt that Christine will, take on board the pharmaceutical situation, which is, as I say, it's our area that's being hit by that primarily.
Okay. I will speak to you about that afterwards because I did try and do something and maybe I need to speak to you about it. Okay, fantastic. Has anybody got any questions for Andrew on that report? Douglas.
Thank you, Chair. Andrew, vaccination take-up, was there any indication of how you counter resistance to the anti-vaccine brigade? And also, was there any breakdown in ethnicity of the people that were needing to take vaccines, for example, preventing measles? Thank you.
Thank you, Douglas. My memory was that the anti-vaxxers didn't figure to any extent that I can remember in a fairly extensive report. Likewise, there has been, I think, general reporting that ethnic groups may have a problem with taking up vaccines, but again, that wasn't a particular issue that I remember in the report itself.
Yeah.
Yes, please. Andrew, Tembury Pharmacy, that we're very lucky because we still have. Do we get any support at all from South Shropshire Council, financial or otherwise? Because a lot of Burford actually comes under Tembury, although it's in South Shropshire. And have we sort of got any intelligence at all with South Shropshire?
Again, my view is not, and I think my personal view is we have a particular problem in Tembury Wells. Tembury Wells years ago used to have 2 pharmacies. Now it has 1. There are a lot of complaints, have been a lot of complaints, including from me, on queuing at Tembury Pharmacy. There are some large organisations who have refused to use Tembury Pharmacy because of the problems there, and actually go to Clibri Mortimer Pharmacy. I've taken this up with the governing board in the past, pharmaceutical governing board, and I haven't got very far with them. I've even gone as far as being verbally attacked in the pharmacy for raising the matter. These are delicate situations. The last thing I want to see is the pharmacy withdraw from Tembury Wells. So you have to be careful how far and how much you press. But I think there are continuing problems at that pharmacy.
Yeah, I wasn't particularly pinpointing the pharmacy. Really, what I wanted to know is that that pharmacy plus the doctor's surgery serves a lot of South Shropshire,
yes,
as in terms of Burford, because Burford's quite a big area. And what I wanted to know was it have we got any cross-border intelligence with them? Do we get any financial help from them? Or do we get any support at all from South Shropshire? Because we are serving Worcester, Malvern Hills is actually serving South Shropshire patients.
The short answer is not that I know of.
Jen might be able to help with that.
Yeah, more than happy to comment on that. I also don't know the specifics of the answer there, but what I would say is that the Integrated Care Board, who commission health services, will be cooperating with those on cross-boundary issues. As you can imagine, cross-boundary issues exist everywhere, and particularly on the border with Herefordshire and Wales, that also creates lots of complexity as well. And so my understanding is that the NHS do have formulas in place, recognising that people will cross borders both for their GP surgeries but also for pharmacy and other services as well. but my recommendation would be asking that question of the ICB in the first instance. And I also would echo earlier comments regarding, particularly if you are concerned about particular parts of Malvern Hills, picking that up via the health scrutiny, where, as Councillor Wild will know, there are representatives of all of those bodies.
Thank you very much. I know there's a pharmacist who would be willing to open a pharmacy in Great Malvern. I even went to Waitrose and actually asked them whether they would be interested in having it, and they didn't bother even to reply, unfortunately. So, we do need some work on that. Andrew.
Thank you. Just an additional point. I mean, there are all these institutions linking things up and making known where demand is. I also belong to something called the Temporary Area Partnership, and they've done great work with our local GPs, actually telling them where building is going to take place, because they were unaware, both in Shropshire and in Worcestershire, that their area that they're serving is going to increase and the people in that area are going to increase. And so there are less than formal arrangements for actually passing this knowledge around. People are stepping into the gap, like Temporary Area Partnership, but this is, this is something that's sprung up in the area almost independently.
Yeah, because I believe that Tembury is probably the only true border town, which almost is like one town, but it's totally. It's straddles, yes, yeah.
I think particularly with it being Shropshire, which is not part of the NHS group, I think that's the other key factor, because Hereford and Worcestershire are supposed to be joined together. Right, okay. Is that as far as we need to go tonight? But we should come back to that, I think, at a future date. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't say Jen was here, and I should have said that before. So we now have the Empty Home Strategy Report, and Laura's here. Jenny obviously will be speaking as well, but maybe Jen as well. So lots of J's and an L.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there are lots of Jennies. I'm happy to present the report, and I am joined by Jen, Laura and David, who I'm sure will be delighted to answer any questions and input. So it's a presentation briefly to you on the empty home strategy before you, and this is a strategy that I'm very happy to be presenting, because it's a really important time that we talk about empty homes in our district, homes that could be used for people to be living in a time where we've got obviously several challenges with our pipeline. The report really focuses on what we can be doing more around empty homes, that we're not solely relying on just new builds, but we're looking at both broadly across the sector at what we can do to tackle some of that supply and demand, whether that's temporary accommodation requirements or whether that's private sector. We know from what we've reviewed that every bit of it is as important as the other. Of course, empty homes, and as I know members have flagged, can also cause big issues in neighbourhoods with antisocial behaviour, and, again, bringing them back into use also helps us tackle that. So I think you'll see from the report, it sets out where we are now, how many long-term empty homes there are, and where they're located, and I thought members would be keen to see from the map and the details where they were. And you can see, although this strategy sets out our approach, we have had David in post now for a little while, and he's got stuck straight in and on the case, already engaging with property owners to see what we can do to get some of these properties back in use. So it's key that we've made progress, but you'll see that there's more that we can do and more that we can do consistently. So the report is effectively recommending that we take more of a proactive approach when we identify and support property owners with empty properties, that we use incentives where it's possible and enforcement where it's necessary, that we improve coordination across council teams to speed up those decisions and actions, and that we put some clear performance measures in place so we can track and show progress, and of course report back to overview and scrutiny if they so wish. So there's some key decisions being asked of executive next week. One is to approve the strategy set out before you for publication and delivery. Secondly, that we approve the budget of £75,000 from Housing Reserved. which will be a new incentive grant scheme for property owners, notably nearly double the level of what Wychavon offers. Officers will look at me. The reason that we've actually put the figure of 75,000 is because we do recognise the properties in the Malvern district can be larger and more complex to bring back to use. And finally, to delegate authority to Jen and I to make any future updates to the strategy, because I do think it's important that we learn and refine our approach as we go. And as I've mentioned, David's out there doing the work, so I think we need to reflect that in the future rather than coming back with a new iteration. So I guess, Chair, in my closing remarks, it's really about making better use of the homes that we've got in the district. And we do hope that the recommendations will help us reduce the number of long-term properties, improve our neighbourhoods and meet housing needs across the district.
Is there any, right, Christine.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny, and thank you, Jen, Laura, David, for your excellent report. I've got 3 questions, if that's okay. So the first question is there a plan to collaborate with housing associations or developers to bring empty homes into the affordable housing stock? Second question is, how will the council engage with communities to identify and report empty homes, especially in rural areas? And the third question, what lessons have been learned from previous strategies or neighbouring councils that have tackled similar issues? Thank you.
I'm happy to take the Housing Association one. I think it would be good to hear, particularly from Dave and Laura, about how we are engaging local communities, because we've got lots of work going on in engaging communities, but also doing some comms. You will have seen some of the comms messages out recently, so I'll hand over in a moment to them. In terms of housing associations and developers, I think we're keen to use any opportunities to bring houses into use that we can. It's unlikely, for example, that the local authority would bring that property back into use. So we absolutely have to work with partners who have got the skills, capacity, the capital to be able to do that. I suspect housing associations may not be as enthusiastic about doing that, purely because it's not a financially sort of preferable way of delivering housing for housing associations. I obviously can't speak for them, but my suspicion is that's not an area where they would want to spend lots of time. But I think the 2 areas that we're particularly looking at is bringing properties into use either for private sale or private rent. And we know that in the district, private rented accommodation is at a very low level in comparison to other parts of the region and country. So we have a very low level of private rented accommodation, and therefore actually this fills that gap. But also, as Councillor Watkins just said, potential use around temporary accommodation, so self-contained temporary accommodation, which helps with our pressure that we currently have and our ambitions to end the use of bed and breakfast accommodation for temporary accommodation. So whilst it may not necessarily fill a gap around kind of social housing picture, it starts to support us in other parts of that wider housing market and ensures that people have got those housing options. So I don't know whether Laura or Dave want to take either of the other 2 questions.
Okay. Good evening. Sorry for being late. I broke down on the way from a funeral, so that sounds like an excuse, but that is correct. So in terms of engagement, I've been in post 2 months, and I'm out there. I'm out in the community. I'm meeting neighbours, so I'll get the report in. We're getting reports in through the website and people calling in, and I am going out and, as I said, looking at the properties, but then speaking to the community in general. And I can say the feedback has been everything I would want, really positive. And once we see properties coming back into use, that will go tenfold. So that's where we're at the moment. A relatively newcomer as I am, but enjoying it and getting my face out there, and people know that I'm around.
Yeah, I would just add as well that obviously priority 2 is around raising awareness of empty homes. So, you know, showcasing our work in this area, what we're doing to tackle it, how people can report it through the website. We're looking at QR codes and all sorts of
kind of a hub online, really.
Yeah, and an online hub full of useful information as well. So we are looking at all sorts of things really to raise awareness and promote our work in this area. Just picking up on the third question in terms of good practice, obviously when we were developing the strategy we were looking at good practice from other local authorities in developing our priority areas, and also particularly around the incentive scheme. There are lots of really good incentive schemes out there, and we've been looking to use some of that good practice and lessons learned from other authorities to develop our scheme, our local scheme. And also what I would say is we are really pleased to have dedicated resource that can be focused on this area, and we've actually had other local authorities approaching us to learn from us and the good practice that we've already started to implement with that dedicated resource. So absolutely learning from lessons from other local authorities, yes.
Can I just thank the team for all their hard work, and thank you for your answers.
Dean.
Just a question basically aimed at Dave, I imagine. Have you had contact with the parish councils? Because they are obviously one of the best reporting things and things of that nature. They'd love moaning about that sort of thing.
Briefly, yeah. I think it's something I'm working towards as I move forward. I've really done a lot of stuff out in the field just from the reports, but that is definitely on my list to be doing as well.
Yes, because I wouldn't have thought you'd need to approach them individually. It's just going out from our normal communication to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, Barbara.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I can't quite understand if people have actually got properties empty. If you rent properties and they become empty, your Malvern Hills only gives you 1 month's grace on the council tax, and then you have to pay 100%. Hereford don't give you any grace at all. And then after 12 months, I believe they were going to start charging 200% council tax, twice the council tax. So if these properties are empty, surely are they being charged council tax? I mean, I would not like to be paying, say, £6,000 a year for an empty property and not get anything back for it. So how does that actually impact the owner?
Jen.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer this one, and colleagues may want to chip in as well. There are lots of reasons why people do and don't leave their properties empty. You'd be amazed at how many do and continue to pay the higher rate of council tax. But one of the things that we have found, particularly by having this role in Wychavon and now building on that here, is that we've been able to have a much closer relationship with council tax to examine and review exemptions to that 200%. So some people do have exemptions to that for various reasons. For example, if they are in a care home or residential care, and so we're able to review and just make sure that that information is up to date. And because, as exactly as Laura said, we've got that additional capacity, focus capacity on the issue, we can keep that information much more up to date. But there are lots of reasons why people leave that and pay the higher rent, the higher rate. And I think that's part of the reason that our strategy is about both incentives and enforcement. And what we found so far is incentives and just helping people out a bit, connecting them in, reminding them you don't actually have to pay this much. All of those things actually help to move things along, more than enforcement in the first instance. Was there anything you wanted to add? Yeah.
So I'm working with a guy at the moment, and it's the emotional attachment to the property. And he has no other family. So I'm kind of finding myself the last few weeks being that sounding board, and maybe I can give some practical solutions that are more practical rather than from the heart. So I think there's going to be a few of those as well, but that's kind of a guy I'm working with at the moment.
Cynthia.
Hi. That's it. Yes, I'd like to ask because there's a great big blob over Great Malvern. I can see that must be because we've got so many, but some of them are very big properties where the housing association isn't involved at all. And so what can you do? Can you give incentives out to get these people to repair them, or they seem to be in a phase where they're not habitable, but they're not doing anything about it? What can we do about that?
Yeah, and that's why we are really keen to develop our incentive scheme to be able to help homeowners bring properties back into use. So the incentive scheme will cover things like disrepair or minor structural issues, electrical rewiring, thermal upgrading, boiler work and insulation, and improvement to kitchens or bathrooms. There are a range of other incentives as well. Dave, did you just want to mention the case study where you were working with the owner to get the property back up to standard, and you worked with the VAT reduction?
Yeah, so we've got the VAT reduction that not all owners are aware of, where they'll pay 5% VAT on works that are done on the property. So we've got a property that kind of stalled with the works, and I got in touch with the owner. They now have the letter confirming how long the property has been vacant for, and that will assist with kind of a 15% reduction in their costs. So it's getting that out there as well to owners.
Thank you. I'm glad you actually stayed here after I showed you all of those buildings and frightened the life out of you on that first day. That was quite an emotional journey, wasn't it, that one? Yes, Great Malvern. Yes, there are a lot of those buildings that Cynthia has. And one thing I did want to stress is that there must also be the stick for those who are beyond the pale and who may have reasons that we cannot really work out that make any kind of sense whatsoever to leave things the way they have. And I know David and Jen and Laura know who I'm talking about or what I'm talking about when we mention that. But there are some things which are just unbelievable when you think about the scale of what you have to deal with. And I will give you 100% support on that. I'm sure the whole council will, because some of these things are just unbelievable. So thank you very much. And I'm really, really pleased you're doing what you're doing, because this is really important. It's one of those things that this council mustn't leave as a legacy in a couple of years' time, is any of that. And when you read some of the emails from some of what has been said about this council by some of these people, they haven't been fair to the officers here or to the councillors as well. And they have tried to use this council as an excuse for not doing some of that work. And that's got to be, they've got to be exposed for that. Thank you. Right, if there's anybody else who would like to speak on that? No? Right, okay, we will now go on to Joshua Martin and Stephen Roberts, who've come here for a presentation from the National Grid. Thank you very much for coming, guys.
Hiya, thanks for having us. So we're both from National Grid Electricity Distribution. I'm Stephen Roberts. I work for the distribution system operator side of the business. I'm a strategic engagement officer for the West Midlands licence area. Do you want to introduce yourself properly as well? Do you want to share this one or press that one?
Good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all. I'm Josh Martin. I work for National Grid also. I work more at the local level, Malvern Hills district area being one of the areas that we cover. I work in the planning department in Worcester depot, and I'm just going to have a chat with you this evening about prospective car charging sites that I've been given a list of to talk about, and any questions anyone might have about the process involved. But I'll hand you back to Stephen now. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks for that. So we just wanted to say off that, as I said, I work for the distribution system operator side of the business, and Josh works for the distribution network operator side of the business. And I just wanted to touch on that because I want to give you a bit of an overview about how we think about the long-term future of our network versus kind of the here and now where Josh works. So the distribution network operator side of the business, they're working in the here and now. They're the people you see in the vans driving around every day, keeping the lights on. They're building the network. They're connecting up what they need to connect up. The distribution system operator, where I work, we're thinking more strategically, long-term. 5 years plus, really. Those lines do blur, though. We're always working together. So we're kind of thinking about the future of the network up to 2050, whether that's a net zero decarbonisation target, electrification, and the impact of everything that's going on the network, and just making sure we can connect those with an aspiration to connect to our distribution network. And if I keep it very high level, at the DSO, we run our strategic system planning process, and we're continually running that. So we run something called the distribution future energy scenarios, and that's basically we get our information in from the local authorities and local plans, information about how things are going to move on. I'll touch more on it a bit, but with that information, we sort of run all the models on it and find out where the pinch points are. So okay, we pile all that information in and we go, okay, well, this area wants to build X amount of houses, they want to roll out X amount of low carbon technologies, they want to connect this and everything. So we figure out, well, if that's the case, we can figure out what sort of year those pinch points in our network happen, and then think, oh, okay, well, that's where we either need to reinforce or we need to use flexibility and that kind of thing. Optioneering is basically like when it comes time to actually hand that across to the DNO to build the solutions that are planned, like, can we use flex, or what do we have to spend now, or what do we have to spend in the future? And it's all just this transparent process that's all publicly available on our website. As I say, I'm keeping it very high level, but I will touch a bit more in detail on the distribution future energy scenarios themselves, because the main part of my role is working with local authorities to get information in for our DFES process. So that will be like the housing numbers, the non-domestic build numbers, low carbon technology rollout. So what's going to happen, heat pump wise, car chargers, EVs, everything. So we send that. That's a yearly process. And also we add in like local plans, infrastructure delivery plans. If an area is doing a local area energy plan, we're supportive of that process as well, and that can plug into our modelling. So all of that data gets modelled and released, and this is all available on our website. You can view our projections on our website as well. There's a couple of different ways to do that. And we can look at it by like local authority level or electricity supply area level. So we really want to, just figure out what needs to connect to the future, and where is that going to need to be. And so that kind of links into how do we think about all that information we're thinking still for the future. How does that relate to transport planning? So in the modelling itself, we look at, like, there's national targets and there's local targets, and it even links into, if you're familiar with the National Energy System Operator as well, NESO, they've got their own national view, we've got our more local view. So, taking into consideration things like the ban of petrol and diesel vehicles, off-street parking, car ownership, second-hand cars, the rates that they get deployed, any initiatives and funding for EV chargers, things like the Levi scheme, local electric vehicle infrastructure fund, how that affects things, you know, like clean air zones, local policy targets. So all of that gets modelled as well and considered in what's going to happen and what the needs on our network is going to be. And then there's just a bit more sort of detail here. So we actually use a company called Regen, who are an energy company, and they do a lot of our modelling in this as well. They pull it all together. And so we look at, you know, we might look at future charger requirement, and we'll split that up by the sub-technologies of chargers as well. That can be domestic off-street, on-street, rapid chargers. I know you might only see them mainly at service stations, that kind of thing. Public car park chargers. EHGV chargers are also modelled as well. Obviously, they're looking at transport hubs and service stations and that kind of thing. And they even get down to modelling like how does the rollout and the change away from diesel, and there's a lot of different things going on here. And I'll be honest, a lot of that kind of in the weeds modelling is way beyond me, but just wanted to give you an appreciation that this is the stuff we're thinking about when we're thinking about the future of our network. And so to just sort of bring it closer to home, I've looked at some of the figures for the Malvern Hills district. And so you can see on this graph, the DFES scenarios we project for the future are by 4, they can be called pathways as well. There's 4 ways or 4 pathways. We say to net zero, although one of them is counterfactual, which is not net zero compliant. But the other 3 pathways to 2050 net zero, they all model either different technologies or different rates of the uptake of technologies. So hydrogen evolution relies on people using more hydrogen, where the electric engagement is like people have picked up the electric technologies a lot quicker than you might think. So everyone goes out and buys it now. Or the holistic transition, which is more of a kind of a balanced blend, and that's the view most local authorities are also taking in our engagement with them. So you can sort of see, you know, I've even put the baseline down there. So as we look at Malvern Hills today, we're looking at that you've got 2,000 electric vehicles, and that's 1,249 charge points. And we've even got the kind of installed capacity of chargers at 9.87 megawatts there. But you can see by 2035, if we just stick with holistic transition for this, you can see, well, we increase up to 34,462 electric vehicles. And then by 2050, we expect 60,885 electric vehicles. And you can see that across those projections. So you can see that's what we think about when we think about the future of our network. And we do that obviously for all technologies and housing and everything else like that. But today we were asked to come and talk about EVs and EV chargers. So I wanted to kind of relate that there. That was a bit high level. If I hand you over to Josh now to kind of talk about, we can take questions now if you want, or we can take questions at the end. I'm happy to.
Yeah, John.
The charge points 1,249, is that public ones or does it include it's private?
It's balanced across all technologies that we know, so it'll be everything. Well, I think it leans heavily towards domestic. If you do go on our website, you can look at our DFES interactive map, and you can choose, oh, I want to look at the charge points and I want to look at domestic only, and you can prod on the map and you can really get down into it, get reports off and all that. But yeah, it's everything.
Can I follow on from that? I've just had a charge point installed. How do you know where the charge points are and who's got them? Spies.
Yeah, so if on a domestic level, the installer would fill a form out and send it through to the local office, and then we would add it onto our system. So we've got a formal record of the extra demand on the network.
Andrew.
The chart up there is for various forms of electric transport. Do you anticipate combustion engines being part of that mix during those periods or not? And if they are part of the mix, what sort of percentage do they represent?
So a lot of our modelling follows the national policy and the view of NESO, the National Energy System Operator, and we follow their assumptions on kind of how the technology changes and over time. So it'll be whatever they consider. So I don't know off the top of my head. I might be able to find out a specific figure if we take that offline, but it's following their view. So there are views of them, okay, it'll be whatever their mix is, it'll be whatever we follow. But I wouldn't know off the top of my head.
Because that's fundamental to a message here, isn't it? I mean, that could be, we've all switched to electric vehicles at some point, or not. It could represent a 50% take up. I think that would be an interesting thing to know.
Yeah, that's fair. I suppose what we want to understand is with our projections is because if this many people take it up to, and that's what we expect, well, then that's going to be a much bigger impact on our network. And that's kind of what we're modelling to understand. And this process is every year. So we run this data is from our DFES 2024 engagement, and this data was released in January. There's also a side note, like we're actually expecting from our DFES 2025 data that'll come out next year, a big increase in a lot of loads, and that's because of a change in like housing targets from central government. We're expecting a doubling or in most areas. Well, then that will also impact the amount of charges. That will also impact the amount of housing. So we might see when the DFES 2025 data comes out, those assumptions change. And because we're always modelling that far to the future, like we'll always be able to adapt and plan our plans, network development plans, to ensure that when the time comes for these people to connect, that we're not a blocker to that aspiration.
Dean.
I think you might have just answered this, but you do take into account all of it, because all of our new houses have to have chargers on. So as much as you engage in the national figures, you engage with our local new developments and the prospective numbers of those.
Yeah, certainly. So as a matter of fact, one of our internal company design policies is when we're approached by a developer to make the connections to domestic dwellings, we factor in the requirement for car chargers, irrespective of whether the developer says that that's what they'll be installed. So you know, it's one of the things that we do on a domestic basis.
Christine.
Oh, sorry, can I follow up on that one quickly before the next question? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt then. I'm still getting used to these buttons. Yeah, like for our long-term projection as well, we'll look at things like the future home strategy, or the warm home policies and the effect of that. You know, like mandating, or if they all have to have a heat pump, if they all have to have a car charger, we do model that. But obviously, you've already said we already take that into account on the technical side. Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add in before.
So I've fixed up my charger so it charges at night time when there's less pressure on the system. But if you've got everybody on the system, how will you be factoring in the pressure on the national grid? Will there be some rules around it about when you can charge?
They can use flexibility, so things can be a flexibility asset. So the flexibility side of the business isn't something I'm so hot on, but we model that because the suppliers are now like an example of flexibility is like if anyone's with Octopus Energy, and I'm not promoting one supplier over another, but for example, they might say, oh, you get an hour's free electricity here, and that's kind of an example of flex where we've got too much or too little. So yeah. But like, it's an interesting question as to kind of how exactly we consider it, and I could always take that offline. But we are planning for what the needs. Like again, we don't want to be a blocker for anyone to connect or anyone to use the thing at any time. So that's what we plan for plan to people to charge. But we do model usage. We model peak. You know, where are the peaks, and that goes into our network planning as well. You know, like even traditionally you'd be calculating your network on I don't know, Christmas Day, and everyone putting the oven on at the same time kind of thing, and the way that they have to think about EVs and EV charging usage can be in a similar way. Like, you know, when do people get home from work, who's charging it overnight, who's doing it, who uses it when, and that's the kind of thing that we understand or try to understand when we plan the future of our network.
John.
Yeah, I just think on that point, my understanding is that you do load balance modelling. And within the load balance modelling, you understand what the distribution is, what power you have to pump to the different parts of the system. So this is something that to my knowledge, it goes away back to the 1970s, that you do this load balancing modelling. And because now you've got very many different sources, you've got PVs and you've got wind power, which have different impedance or different characteristics when you connect them to the grid, then you actually have to model all those elements. And I presume that what you do now, the complexity of the network has a load balancing aspect to it, and therefore you could actually model that into everybody putting their kettle on at the same time, or the night charging as to where that night charging is likely to be. So I presume that's how the system actually works. If you could sort of throw any light on that, it'd be helpful.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to comment technically as well, but yeah, we think about all kinds of things. So obviously, it sounds like after this that you're far more technical than I am. But yeah, we have a team of DSO engineers, and they're always looking at the different profiles and balancing the network and looking at your load and all that. The whole reason the distribution system operator exists now as a separate function from the distribution network operator is to look at that. So it's not traditionally like one power station centrally going down the chain to everyone. It's two-way energy flows. It's smart energy system, late load balancing. There's a lot of things that we do with flexibility and reinforcement and trying to make those decisions of what to do and when. So I don't know if that helps, but like I could always happy to take other questions away and come back with more detailed answers. But we've got a whole lot of DSO engineers who are solving those problems and working on that daily.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair. Just to come back in on that, I think the big issue around Malvern Hills is the capacity of the grid to deliver into a particular area. So there are certain areas which are sort of under capacity for future growth. And we had, nearly 5 years ago, it was Western Power Distribution, which National Grid has taken over. And they put together a business plan. They worked on a business plan. And I wonder, I don't know how much that's changed the way National Grid is looking at things, whether they've adopted that business plan, modified it, updated it, or what. But there are areas in Malvern Hills that are actually short of capacity for growing the likes of EV chargers or whatever it might be. Our green economy is supposed to be it needs a double capacity on the grid from what it was or what it currently is. So there is actually quite a lot of growth to come in the grid. There's quite a lot of money needs to be spent. The Western Power Distribution, if I remember it rightly, over a 5-year period, were investing £5 billion. I may have got that wrong, but I think they were upgrading in their area that they covered with £5 billion over a 5-year period. I don't know whether National Grid has changed any of that, upgraded it, improved it, or what. I don't know. Can you comment on that? Would be helpful as well.
So you talk about the potential doubling of demand. I've heard of anywhere from double to triple of demand as well. National Grid Electricity Distribution purchased Western Power Distribution, so with the same distribution network. So a lot of those processes are the same. So understanding that our distribution future energy scenarios leads into our network development plan. And I wonder if that was the plan that you may have referred to. So we've got our network development plan. We've got our price control as well from Ofgem of how much we have to invest on the network between what period. Those figures I don't know off the top of my head. They're available website, but also we could take that away as an action to come back to you if you want. But yeah, the short answer is yes, all those processes are still in there. It's just that what used to belong to, it all used to be in-house, it used to be all within either Western Power or NGED, but our strategic planning process just got functionally split out to the DSO because it's bigger and more complex than it's ever been. And that's kind of why we exist. But yeah, all those constraints is something we're working on, and we know that there are constraints, and we don't want to be a blocker to people's aspirations in the future. The last thing on that point is because traditionally we weren't allowed to invest in like reinforcement ahead of need because we're all regulated by Ofgem. But that's only in the last 2 years that we've kind of been able to, with evidence, and this is kind of the reason I exist again, figuring out that evidence to then start to be able to invest ahead of need, to kind of start building that out before it's kind of needed, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's kind of turning this big ship around to plan the future of the network. So then obviously in the future, when it comes down to what Josh is doing on the front lines of planning that, that it all goes okay. But it's just taking time to turn that ship around.
Are we going to end up with any small nuclear power plants?
We are generationally agnostic, so that kind of is beyond our. We're the distribution network, so we take it from after the National Grid transmission. It's called National Grid, but we're separate. We'll take it, we'll distribute it down to your just your meter basically, where it's owned by your supplier.
So if one appears, you'll just connect to it.
Yeah, so we deal with whoever wants to connect either way, and we work with NESO closely on that. So it's there's a lot of conversations going on with NESO who are having a say on what can connect and where generationally, but that's not something I can kind of comment on. But apart from that, we do have to figure that out because there's a lot of technical stuff that needs sorting.
Well, it's just in case anybody doesn't realise what I'm talking about, these are the same generators that power nuclear submarines, which are going to be used on land and put into small areas. And actually, it does make sense in rural areas where you can't get any other generation there. Otherwise, it might save a hell of a lot of money to do that. And also, you wouldn't necessarily have the huge pylon network, which is the other thing I was going to ask about. Are we going to end up with more transmission networks above ground coming into our areas or not?
Again, I suppose National Grid Transmission is a separate company, so it's not something I can comment on, I'm afraid. I can kind of put you in touch with the people who deal with that.
Yeah, that might be an idea. Dean, sorry.
Yes, you're on about distribution, but I was just reading about Holland, I think this morning or yesterday, where they're having great problems because they've got so far ahead with their solar and wind, and the company, the local, in fact, it was at your level, I think, the problem was where they couldn't actually take on these sort of small generators. So just a comment really. And I heard 5 times as much, but if you take gas as being 80% and you've got to get rid of gas, then...
Yeah, it's all modelled. Yeah, we again, these are all the problems we're thinking about, but now it's really interesting to hear as well. But I guess if I pass to Josh to kind of look at the more local side of it, if that's okay. I mean, and we can come back for other questions afterwards. I just want to make sure we do this.
Yeah, so quite different to what Stephen has been talking about there. I was given a list of car parks, prospective locations, all seem to be in Upton upon Severn. You know, I've had a quick glance over each site, and I mean, they're not the biggest car parks in the world, so I can't envisage them having, you know, huge requirements for lots of car chargers. So on that basis, from a capacity point of view, I wouldn't envisage public charge points being too much of an issue capacity-wise. Some of the other issues I think you might would need to think about in Upton is I think the Hanley Road car park has flooding issues, so I'm not too sure we would install the supply in there for that one. So I don't know if that one would be ruled out by yourselves or not. But certainly the others, there is the capacity for kind of a smaller type charges. It's difficult to say what capacity is available because we don't necessarily know how much the council really want capacity wise, so it's difficult to say, but certainly smaller kind of publicly used chargers should be, you know, fairly okay. Some of the things to consider for each of the sites is, with Malvern Hills being you know, a fairly rural district, is a lot of our assets tend to be on third party land, and so quite often we'll see that we would need to speak to third parties to get the connections to the site. So, and also the budget is, you know, is how much the council do they want to spend on the connection. But we're more than happy to work with the council directly or whoever they appoint to fit the car charges and work with them to find kind of workable solutions really. So I think that's, if anyone's got any questions on those sites or anything, or any...
Are any of them going to be higher capacity ones? Because for those, you know, with batteries now that are getting bigger and bigger, there distinct lack of them in the centre, certainly, even of Malvern itself, which is the most densely populated area. There aren't any. Well, there are a few, but not as many as I would have expected, really, to be growing.
Yeah, so we, as a company, we don't fit the actual car charging units themselves. We fit the power supply for them. And we basically get the applications from companies called charge point operators. They make a formal application to us, and then we work with them to provide them with a design and quote to meet their capacity requirement. So I think the best people to speak to kind of determine how much capacity you need for each car park is a charge point operator company in the first instance, and we're more than happy to liaise with them and provide them with designs and quotes. And if those designs and quotes were kind of out of budget, then we could look at a lesser capacity, for them or yourselves. So we look to design as and when the applications come in, really, and we do strive to get these sites connected as quickly as we can.
Sorry, Christine.
Following on from that, my observation as an EV driver is that if you're using your car locally, then you plug it in when you get home, and that's easily done. The bigger concern for an EV driver is when they're away from their area. So in terms of Malvern, we get a lot of visitors to the area. My observation would be you'd be parked here, but then you'd want a faster charge than we get. So it'd be a bigger turnover. So our car park just near here services the theatres and the swimming pools and all sorts of things like that. And I think people would like to use them and get a faster charge in places like that. And in Upton, I agree with you about the flooding. There's no way on one of those car parks, but there's a huge amount of visitors, festival goers that go to Upton, and they too would like a fast charge, but then a quick turnover so somebody else can have a go at it. So that's how I see the future for our visitors, really.
Actually, yeah, I was going to ask this. Is there a portable, I mean, we have portable toilets, we have portable water supplies. Does anybody, if you produced a point, say in somewhere like Upton where there are all these festivals where you don't need a charger all the time, but then somebody could bring in the charge points temporarily. Does anybody ever do that in anywhere at all? I've never heard of it, but I just wondered, actually thinking about it from your point of view.
It's not something I've seen, no.
Yeah. I think there's a firm in Gloucester who supplies, my son was buying them out at one stage, batteries, large-scale batteries for festivals and things. Whether it would cope with all the cars needing charging, well, it's a different matter.
No, I think it wouldn't cope. I mean, we're talking about something which would be multiple charges if you're dealing with that kind of usage. It's interesting that there isn't anything like that, isn't it, when you think about it? But anyway, it was worthwhile asking the question. Sorry, Barbara.
Are you suggesting, which would in fact make sense, that the actual power points is put strategically in different places? I mean, you can have an outside power point at home, can't you? So if they're put, like strategically, and then, as you quite rightfully said, if they have a festival, just bonk, bonk, bonk.
It's just an idea, Andrew.
Just a comment, really, and that is that I think you've got strategically an unenviable task. We're heading towards a budget where the incentives for electric vehicles are likely to change. There's going to be probably a cost per mile either introduced or they will schedule it in, which will shift the incentives. And that's just one factor that will actually change things. Yeah, so well done, and I sympathise.
There's also induction coming at some point, isn't there? which will change things completely again, because you don't need points then. It could be you'll be traveling along and you'll charge up as you go along eventually. There's all kinds of technology which is going to completely change all of your modeling and the infrastructure itself. So
Not if it works as badly as my iPhone does on induction.
well, there we go. That's it. Let's cancel that then.
Yeah, I do have some conversations with people if I go to events or whatever, and they'll be talking about the different things they're up to in private sector people, because they want to solve problems, they want to make themselves money and whatever. But like, it's just where they require grid connections. They might ask, okay, one is the capacity, two, technically can this work? And there's things that kind of, again, our tech guys figure out. So I mean, from my personal point of view, those are fascinating conversations, and we try and facilitate that where possible. But so if you come back.
Just Andrew again.
Sorry. In our area, this may not affect us, but we see in the press from time to time that various large green schemes, quite often like wind farms or whatever, can't get a connection because the capacity isn't there, and this could prevent connection for maybe a decade in some cases. We've got anything in our area that actually fits that sort of profile?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll put the next slide on anyway, just for that. You'll talk more on that in a bit. But one, we always say engage with us as early as possible. So whoever that is, whether you're thinking about connecting, wind farms, solar farms, or whatever, how far in advance, as early as possible, you need to connect to us, see what capacity is available. But when we're talking about sort of, I don't know, strategically as well, NESO, the National Energy System Operator, are kind of taking more of a view on that. So they're doing two things. And they're working on the Spatial Strategic Energy Plan and the Regional Energy Strategic Plan. So obviously I can't comment fully in an official capacity about what they're doing, but they're looking at issues like that, like what can go where, what should go where, what areas have got too much planned in their area, and that kind of thing that they can comment on, because at National Grid Electricity Distribution, we have to treat everyone the same. And that's an Ofgem requirement. So it's by first come, first served. Everyone's the same, everyone's treated the same. And the capacity is there available for everyone until someone applies for it. And then the whole point, looping back into our strategic planning, is like, okay, we want to figure out who's going to apply in the future, make sure capacity is there for them. So it's kind of this whole big picture. But again, I don't know if you reach out or whatever, obviously check out NESO, but I'm willing to help get you those resources to you.
Cynthia.
I know that somebody asked earlier, come on, about will we, to deliver this increased electricity power, will we have more pylons and things skating across the country? I know it isn't your area, but do you think we will?
Okay, that's not something I can comment on, because I don't work for National Grid Transmission, so I can only commit in like an official capacity electricity distribution. So I can't elaborate any more on that.
Andrew?
From what I read, and I'm no expert, I think it comes down to whether the government takes a short or a long-term view. Short term, they'll bang up pylons because it's quick to do. From what I read, the long-term cost advantage is in burying cables.
Well, yeah, and also there's a national security issue. If you run the entire country from something that can be blown up by a drone, which costs £2.50, then you want to have them buried. Anyway, Dean.
Just thought, if we do my favourite thing of putting a windmill in every village and a few on top of the Malvern Hills, then we won't need so many pylons around, because you get local generation.
I think that's quite enough, Dean. Thank you. Cheers. Bye. Yes. Boo. Sorry, gentlemen, have you?
Yeah, certainly. So, certainly on a local level, like I say, as in the local team, we're more than happy to work with either the council directly. I know, for example, in Worcester City, they had a dedicated building services engineer who made applications directly to us. And like I say, sort of smaller type charges. These sites here, they should generally be okay from a capacity point of view, but it's more ascertaining cable routes, which could, would need more of a look at, and liaison with third parties can sometimes be a bit of a sticking point. But yeah, if you guys come to us as you know, as soon as you have any ideas or sites, you know, we can get an application and get the ball rolling.
Yep, thank you very much. I think there is a distinct lack of transmission at the retail park, for example, which I cannot fathom. But then again, it is owned by Surrey County Council, isn't it? Probably doesn't help, does it? Yeah, you wouldn't believe it, would you? But anyway, is that it? Or anybody else would like to ask something? Oh, okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. It was very, very helpful. And we now know who else we need to get in here to ask awkward questions of. Thank you.
And we wish you very good luck in the future.
Yes.
All our demands.
Yes. Your workload must change literally by the hour almost. Thank you very much for coming. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't know how long this is going. I'll be around if anyone wants to make contact or anything for that. As again, the main part of my role is engaging with local authorities. So it's usually, you know, planning officers, energy officers, that kind of level. So that officer level at the council, I'm always talking to, and we're always talking with the local team and the planners because yeah, we're always trying to figure that out. But yeah, thanks for inviting us.
Pleasure. Thank you. Right, item 10, probably for noting, the council's forward plan. Has anybody got anything to say about that particular issue? Or should we go on to the overview and scrutiny work programme, which is the last item on the agenda? Is there anybody who's come forward with anything else that needs to be on the programme that we haven't already put on it so far? You don't need to bring it up now, really, if you don't want to. You could send an email and then we could bring it up at the next pre-meet. Oh, Douglas.
Not the work programme, but just generally the presentation of facts by the council to the public. There's lots and lots of good news, especially in our support for poorer families, the food programme, the better heating for homes, aid for people in distress. And we get very little press release, very little press information. It's not noted. And people say, well, what's the council done? What are they doing? We spend thousands and thousands of pounds on this, of ratepayers' money. In the report here, we've got £40,000 earmarked for a further probably 40 families at about £1,000 a shot. But do you get any notice of it? Do you get any, publicity? Is it mentioned on Hereford and Worcester Radio, Sunshine Radio? We really do need to get somebody to bang our drum a bit better. And it's not a case of, oh, it's the Tories or it's the governing group or whatever. It's the council. It's, it doesn't matter what colour it is, it's the council that's doing it. And we have all this production of figures and data, but very little of it gets put into the public press. And people say, oh yeah, what do you lot do? You're all pissing in the same pot, sort of thing. But we don't get it. We don't get it. We don't see anything. That's a very good legal term, Andrew.
Yes.
Paul, do you understand what I'm trying to get at? Because
yes.
We spend fortunes of money, but do we ever get any press reports saying the council's doing a good job?
I think we should put together a list of those things and then ask for them to be put forward. And that might be an agenda item.
Yeah, we have a publicity.
Yes, but I think we need to tell them exactly what we should be pushing a bit harder, if that is the case. Let's do that. Yeah.
We're doing the work. No. If we do, we've got to promote the Greens, and most of the press releases that come out of this place never get taken up by any of the local press. And you should talk to BBC Hereford and Worcester a lot more, because they're always wanting people to come on their programmes and talk to them, and that's what we need. Yes,
I go and talk to them.
Yeah.
I know, But I think the point that you made and what would make it an issue for this committee is the council element to it, which is nothing to do with parties and nothing to do with administration or not administration. And so therefore, yeah, let's have that on the agenda then, okay? Because that is a non-political issue. Okay, fine. Is that it? Thank you very much, everybody, for coming and staying, and we will be coming back, and I now call the meeting to an end.